Hi guys, sorry it's been a while. We had some really bad storms and flooding here, and then Grandma got a cold. I'm still just a little bit sick, but we'll read as much as we can, okay? Alright, snuggle down. We're on chapter 9 of How to Train Your Dragon. Fear, vanity, revenge, and silly jokes. March turned into April, and April turned into May. After Fireworm's remark about the pathetic bunny rabbit, Toothless never pooed in the kitchen again. But Hiccup hadn't made any further progress in training him. It was still raining, but it was a warm rain. The wind was blowing, but it was a less furious wind. It was just about possible to stand upright. The gulls' eggs were hatching on the rocks, and the parent gulls dive-bombed Hiccup and Fishlegs when they came to the long beach to practice. "Kill, Horror Crow, kill!" said Fishlegs to Horror Cow, who was calmly perched on his shoulder. "You could have that black-backed gull for breakfast. He's barely half your size. Honestly, Hiccup, I give up. I don't know how I'm going to pass the hunting section of the test. Horror Cow just doesn't have the killer instinct. She'd never survive in the wild." Hiccup laughed hollowly. "You think you've got problems? Toothless and I are failing right from the beginning. The basic obedience commands, the retrieval, the compulsory exercises, the hunting, the lot." "It can't be that bad," said Fishlegs. "Watch," said Hiccup. The boys moved along the beach a bit, out of range of the gulls. They started practicing the most basic command of all. Go. The dragon was supposed to stand, bolt upright on the handler's outstretched arm. The handler would then bark the command as loudly as possible, while simultaneously lifting his arm to fling the dragon into the air. The dragon was supposed to soar gracefully into flight when the handler's arm reached its highest point. Horror Cow yawned, scratched, and slowly flapped off, grumbling to herself. Toothless was even less obedient. "Go!" yelled Hiccup. Hiccup flung his arm up. Toothless hung on. "I said go!" Hiccup repeated in frustration. "Why go?" shuddered Toothless, gripping even tighter. "Just go, 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 go!" screamed Hiccup, flapping his arm up and down frantically, with Toothless hanging on to it for dear life. Toothless stayed. "Toothless," said Hiccup as reasonably as he could, "please go. If you don't start going when I tell you to, we are both going to be thrown into exile." "But I don't want to go," Toothless pointed out, equally reasonably. Fishlegs watched the whole process in appalled amazement. "You really do have problems," he said in an odd voice. "Yup," said Hiccup. He finally managed to uncurl Toothless's claws, which had relaxed their grip for a second, and pushed him off. Toothless landed on the sand with a squeal of outrage, and immediately attached himself to Hiccup's leg, getting a good grip on the sandals with his talons, and wrapping his wings around Hiccup's calf. Not going," said Toothless stubbornly. "It can't get much worse than this," said Hiccup, "so I'm going to try a new tack." He took out the notebook in which he had been jotting down all he knew about dragons, in the hope that it might be useful. "Dragon motivation," Hiccup read aloud. "Number 1, gratitude." Hiccup sighed. "Number 2, fear." "That works, but I can't do it." 3, 4, 5. greed, vanity, and revenge. Those are all worth a try. 6, jokes and riddling talk. Only if I am desperate. This has got to be a first, drawled Fishlegs. But I'm with Gobber the Belch on this one. Why don't you just yell a bit louder? Hiccup ignored him. Okay, Toothless, said Hiccup to the little dragon, who was pretending to be asleep as he held on to Hiccup's leg. For every fish you catch me, I will give you 2 more lobsters when we get home. Toothless opened his eyes. Alive? He said eagerly. Can Toothless kill them? Please, just this once? No, Toothless, said Hiccup firmly. I keep on telling you, it isn't kind to torture creatures smaller than yourself. Toothless closed his eyes again. You're so boring, he said sulkily. You're such a clever, quick dragon, Toothless, Hiccup flattered. I bet you could catch more fish than any of the others on Thursday if you wanted to. Toothless opened his eyes to consider the matter. Twice as many, he said modestly, but I don't want to. This was unanswerable. Hiccup crossed vanity off his list. The Monstrous Nightmare. The Monstrous Nightmare is the largest and most terrifying of the domestic dragons. Dazzling flyers, magnificent hunters, and fearsome fighters, they can be wild and difficult to train. By unofficial Viking law, only a chief or the son of a chief can own one. Statistics. Colors: emerald green, brilliant scarlet, and deepest purple. Armed with scary fangs, extra extendable claws. Defenses: nightmares don't need defenses. Radar: none. Poison: bite is slightly poisonous. Hunting ability: amazing to watch. Speed: fast. Fear and fight factor: very, very scary. You know that big red fireworm dragon who was so rude to you? Said Hiccup. Toothless spat on the ground in indignation. Said I was a newt with wings. Said I was an incontinent bunny rabbit. Toothless going to kill her. Toothless going to scratch her to death. Toothless going to... Yes, said Hiccup hastily. That fireworm dragon and her master, who looks like a pig, think that Fireworm is going to catch more fish than anybody else at the Thursday celebrations. Think how stupid they are going to look if you win the prize for most promising dragon instead of her. Toothless got off Hiccup's leg. I will think about that, said Toothless. He waddled off a couple of feet and thought about it. 5 minutes later, he was still thinking. He let out the odd chuckle every now and then, but every time Hiccup said, So how about it then? He just replied, Still thinking. Go away. With a sigh, Hiccup put a line through revenge. Okay, said Fishlegs, looking over Hiccup's shoulder. You've tried everything else. How about jokes and riddling talk? I assume you are desperate. Toothless, said Hiccup, if you catch me a nice big mackerel, you will be the cleverest, fastest dragon on Berk, and you will make that fireworm dragon look like an idiot, and you will have all the lobsters you can eat when we get home, and I will tell you a really good joke.
Toothless turned around. Toothless loves jokes. He flapped onto Hiccup's arm again. All right, Toothless help you, but not because me being nice or anything yucky. Oh, no, no, said Hiccup, of course not. Us dragons cruel and mean, but we do love a joke. Tell me, now. Hiccup laughed. No way. After you bring me a mackerel. Okay, then, said Toothless. He jumped off Hiccup's arm into the air. A dragon hunting is a very impressive sight, even a scrawny infant one like Toothless. He flew across the beach in his usual untidy, lopsided fashion, shrieking a few insults along the way at any cormorants that looked smaller than him. But as soon as he reached the sea, Toothless seemed to grow up a bit. The sea salt awoke in him some ancestral memory of the great pedigree hunting monsters that were his forefathers. He spread out his wings like a kite and flew fairly swiftly over the surface of the choppy waves, keeping his body and wings steady as he searched for the movement of fish. He spotted something and soared upward in circles until he was so high that Hiccup, craning his neck backward on the beach, could only just see him as a tiny speck. The speck was motionless for a second, and then Toothless dived, his wings folded by his sides, dropping like a stone out of the sky. He disappeared into the water and was gone for quite a while. Dragons can stay under water for at least 5 minutes if they want to, and Toothless got quite distracted under there, catching one fish and then another, unable to decide which was the biggest. Hiccup had gotten bored and was looking for oysters when Toothless came bursting triumphantly out of the sea carrying a small mackerel. He dropped the mackerel at Hiccup's feet, did 3 somersaults in a row, and landed on Hiccup's head. He let out the dragon's cry of triumph, which is a bit like a rooster crowing, but a lot louder and more self-satisfied. Then he leaned over and stared into Hiccup's eyes, upside down. Now, tell me a joke, said Toothless. Whimpering Woden, said Hiccup. He did it. He really did it. Tell me a joke, said Toothless again. What's black and white and red all over? Asked Hiccup. Toothless didn't know. A sunburned penguin, replied Hiccup. It was a very, very old joke, but apparently it hadn't made it to Wild Dragon Cliff. Toothless thought it was hysterically funny. He flew off to catch more fish so he could hear more jokes. It was an enjoyable afternoon. The rain stopped, the sun shone, and Toothless didn't do too badly at all with the hunting. He dropped a few fish, and at one point wandered off entirely to chase rabbits on the cliff tops. But he came back when Hiccup called, eventually, and by the end of a couple of hours he had caught 6 medium-sized mackerel and a dogfish. All in all, Hiccup was pretty satisfied. After all, he said to Fishlegs, it's not like I'm expecting to win the prize for most promising dragon or anything. All I need is to show that Toothless is basically under my control, and for him to catch a few fish. We'll make fools of ourselves compared to Snotlout and his beastly hunting legend, but at least we'll have passed initiation. What was more, as Toothless dropped the last mackerel on the heap in front of Hiccup, Fishlegs noticed something sharp and gleaming in the dragon's lower jaw. Toothless has gotten his first tooth, said Fishlegs. It seemed a very good omen. As they staggered home, they passed Old Wrinkly, who had been sitting on a rock watching them for the past couple of hours. Very impressive, wheezed Old Wrinkly as the boys showed him the fish wrapped up in Hiccup's cloak. We reckon Hiccup really might pass the final initiation test on Thursday, said Fishlegs excitedly. So you're still worrying about that piddly little test, are you, Hiccup? Asked Old Wrinkly. There are larger concerns, you know. There's a ginormous storm brewing up, for instance. It should hit us in about 3 days. Piddly little test, said Fishlegs indignantly. What do you mean, piggly little test? The Thursday festival is the biggest event of the year. Everybody who is anybody will be there. All the hairy hooligans and the meatheads. Plus, this may not seem important to you, but anybody who fails this piddly little test gets put into exile to get eaten up by cannibals or something equally gruesome. I'm going to call myself Hiccup the Useful and his dragon Toothful, said Hiccup, beaming. I thought of it just now, and I'm really pleased with it. It's solid, dependable, not too flashy, and not too much to live up to. This reptile finally got his act together and caught some fish, said Fishlegs, pointing at Toothless, who was picking his nose with one claw. Incredible though it may seem, Hiccup may pass this test after all. Oh, I think it's almost a certainty, said Old Wrinkly, looking at Toothless, who was now attempting to cross his eyes and was falling down in the process. Almost, repeated Old Wrinkly thoughtfully. And the boys went home, with Toothless following behind them, whining, Carry me, it's not fair, my wings ache. Chapter 10. Thursday. The Thursday celebrations were a truly spectacular occasion. The hairy hooligans' fierce rivals, the meatheads from nearby Meathead Islands, sailed across the inner ocean to the Isle of Berk for this great gathering. The visitors set up camp in Blackheart Bay, which turned overnight from an empty desert of echoing seagulls into a bustling village of tents made out of sails too patched to be used at sea any more. By the next morning, the Long Beach was packed with stalls and jugglers and fortune-tellers. There was a happy confusion of Vikings spotting old friends and practicing their sword play and yelling at the children to stop hitting each other. Right now, for Thor's sake. No, I really mean it this time, or else. Vast Viking men sat on uncomfortable rocks, guffawing loudly like gigantic sea lions in a holiday mood. Impressively large Viking women huddled in groups, cackling like seagulls and downing whole mugs of tea in one swallow. Despite Old Wrinkly's gloomy forecasts of terrible storms and typhoons, it was a gloriously hot June day with not even a hint of a cloud in the offing. The young hero's final initiation test would not start until 2 p.m. that afternoon, so Hiccup spent the morning listening round-eyed to storytellers telling tall tales of dirty Danes and pirate princesses. He was sick with nerves, so he found it difficult to enjoy the occasion as much as he had in previous years. Even Gobber, throwing up during the how many gulls' eggs can you eat in 1 minute competition, failed to raise more than a faint smile on his pale, tense face. Hiccup's family had a picnic lunch overlooking the axe-fighting display. Hiccup could not eat a thing, and nor, unusually, could Toothless, who was in a difficult mood and turned his nose up at the tuna sandwich Valhalla-rama offered. Let's check out the Thursday celebration calendar. Program of events. 9 o'clock. Hammer throwing for the over 60s only. Meet up at the Marooner's Rock with your own hammer or somebody else's. Hard hats essential for spectators. Ooh, that would be perfect for Grandma and Grandpa, because they're over 60. 10:30. How many gulls' eggs can you eat in 1 minute? Baggy Bum the Beer Belly is the defending champion in this hotly contested competition. 11:30. Ugliest Baby Contest. 12:30. Axe Fighting Display. Admire the delicate art of fighting with axes. 2 o'clock. Young Heroes Final Initiation Test. Watch tomorrow's Viking heroes as they compete. Whose dragon will be the most obedient and whose will catch the most fish? Blood, teeth, loud yelling, this sport has everything. 3:30. Grand Raffle and Closing Ceremony. Sounds like a pretty busy day. Good to keep your dragon's appetite sharp for the game, boomed Stoic the Vast, who was in an excellent mood. He had won a bet on Goggle Toad in the Ugliest Baby Contest, and was looking forward to seeing his son's brilliant display during the initiation test. As the day wore on, a hot wind suddenly started blowing out of nowhere. It was still sweltering, but ominous gray clouds were gathering on the horizon. There was the odd rumble of thunder in the air. Maybe old Wrinkly had been right, thought Hiccup as he gazed upward, and Thor is going to put in his traditional appearance at the Thor's Day Thursday celebrations. Parp! Will all youths hoping to be initiated into the tribes this year please make their way to the ground at the left of the beach? Hiccup gulped, nudged Toothless, and stood up. This was it. Hiccup was one of the last to get to the ground, which was the large area of wet sand just at the edge of the sea. The boys from his own tribe were already assembled, their dragons hovering a couple of feet above them. Everybody was chattering excitedly, and even Snotlout was looking nervous. The Meathead boys and their dragons seemed to be gigantic, rough-looking customers, far tougher than the hooligans. One, in particular, was a great, hulking brute of a boy who looked 15 at least. Thuggery the Meathead and his dragon, Killer. Ooh, they do look pretty big and scary, don't they? Hiccup presumed he was Thuggery, Chief Mogadon, the Meathead's son, because a silver-gray, monstrous nightmare, about 3 feet tall, was perched on one of his shoulders. It was looking at Fireworm like a Rottweiler thinking evil thoughts. Fireworm acted unconcerned. An aristocrat never growls, purred Fireworm sweetly. You must be one of those mongrel nightmares. We pure green bloods, descended from the great Ripperclaw himself, would never dream of doing anything so common. The silver nightmare's growling increased in volume. The crowd was assembling at the touchline. Hiccup tried not to notice Stoic the Vast, blasting his way to the front with great cries of, "Out of my way! I'm a chief! 10-1, my son catches more fish than your son in this test," boomed Stoic, giving his old enemy Mogadon the Meathead a good prod in the stomach. Mogadon the Meathead narrowed his eyes and wondered whether to hit him. Maybe after the test. "And which," asked Mogadon the Meathead, "is your son? Is he the tall one who looks like a pig with the skeleton tattoos and the red monstrous nightmare?" "Nope," said Stoic happily. "That's my brother Baggybum's son. My son is that skinny one over there with the toothless daydream." Mogadon the Meathead broke into a big smile. He slapped Stoic on the back and yelled, "I take your bet and double it!" "Done!" shouted Stoic, and the two great chieftains shook hands and bumped bellies on the bet. Gobber the Belch was in charge of this final stage of the initiation test. He was still looking a bit green from his unpleasant experience in the how many gull eggs can you eat in 1 minute competition. This had not improved his temper.
"All right, you horrible lot," yelled Gobber. "This is where we find out if you are the stuff that heroes are made of. You will either walk out of this arena full members of the noble tribes of hairy hooligans and merciless meatheads, or go into miserable exile forever from the inner islands. Let's see which it's going to be, shall we?"
He grinned nastily at the 20 boys standing before him.
"I shall begin by inspecting you and your animals as if you were warriors about to go into battle. I shall introduce you to the watching members of the tribes you hope to enter. Then the test will begin. You will demonstrate how you have asserted yourselves over these wild creatures, and tamed them by the sheer force of your heroic personalities. You will start by performing the basic commands of go, stay, and fetch. You will end by ordering your reptile to hunt fish for you, as your forefathers have done before you."
Hiccup swallowed nervously.
"The boy and dragon who most impress the judge, and that is me," Gobber bared his teeth grimly, "will receive the extra glory of being called the hero of heroes and most promising dragon. The boys and dragons who fail this test will say farewell to their families forever and leave the tribe to go where we do not care."
Gobber paused. "Poetry," muttered Fishlegs, just loud enough for Gobber to hear. Gobber glared at him.
"Heroes or exiles!"
yelled Gobber the Belch. "Heroes or exiles!" yelled 18 boys fanatically back at him. "Heroes or exiles!" yelled the watching hooligan and meathead tribes. "Oh, please let me be a bit of a hero, just this once," Hiccup and Fishlegs each thought to themselves. "Nothing too spectacular or anything, just to get through this test."
"Stand to attention, with your dragons on your right arms!" yelled Gobber the Belch.
Gobber walked down the row of boys for the inspection.
"Beautiful turnout,"
Gobber congratulated Thuggery the Meathead on his nightmare dragon killer, who spread out his shining wings to show off a wingspan of about 4 feet. Gobber stopped abruptly when he got to Hiccup.
"And what in the name of Woden," demanded Gobber, blanching a little, "is this?"
"It's a toothless daydream, sir," muttered Hiccup. "Small, but vicious," added Fishlegs helpfully.
"Toothless daydream?"
blustered Gobber.
"That's the smallest common or garden I have ever seen. What do you think I am, an idiot?"
"No, no, sir," murmured Fishlegs reassuringly. "Just a little on the slow side." Gobber glowered dangerously. "A toothless daydream," explained Hiccup, "looks exactly like a common or garden, except for the characteristic wart on the end of its nose."
"Silence!" said Gobber in a very loud whisper, "or I shall throw you all the way to the mainland. I hope that this dragon hunts better than it looks. You and your fishy friend here are the worst candidates for initiation I have ever had the displeasure of teaching. But you are the future of this tribe, Hiccup, and if you shame us in front of the meatheads, I personally will never forgive you. Do you understand?"
Hiccup nodded. Each boy then stepped forward to bow and hold up his dragon for the spectators to applaud. There was huge clapping for Snot-Face, Snot-Lout, and his dragon Fireworm, rivaled only by the mighty cheering for Thuggery the Meathead and his dragon Killer.
"I give you, last but not least,"
Gobber the Belch was trying to put a bit of enthusiasm into his yelling.
"The fearsome, the terrible, the only son of Stoic the Vast. Hiccup the useful and his dragon Toothful."
Hiccup stepped forward and held up Toothless as high as he could to make him look a bit bigger. There was a slightly appalled silence. People had seen dragons this small before, of course, normally scampering about after field mice in the wild, but not as noble hunting dragons competing in initiation.
"Size isn't everything,"
boomed Stoic so loudly that you could have heard him several beaches away, and he banged his great hands together to start the applause. Everyone was terrified of Stoic's famous temper, so they joined in with polite, wild cheering. Toothless was still in a mood, but he was delighted to be the center of attention, and he puffed out his chest and bowed solemnly to left and right. A few of the neatheads snickered. "I've changed my mind," thought Hiccup, closing his eyes. "This is the worst moment of my life so far." "Okay, Toothless," he whispered into the little dragon's ear. "This is our big chance. Catch lots of fish here, and I will tell you more jokes than you have ever heard in your life, which will make that big red fireworm dragon really cross." Toothless took a sideways glance at Fireworm. She was sharpening her nails on Snot-Lout's helmet with the smug certainty of a dragon who knows she's about to win the prize for most promising dragon. Brrrr! The test began. Toothless didn't do too badly in the early obedience exercises, though he clearly thought it was extremely dull. It was now raining quite hard, and Toothless hated the rain. He wanted to go home and relax in front of a nice warm fire. Fireworm and Killer were going and fetching as soon as Snot-Lout and Thuggery commanded, and they were diving and breathing out fire as they did so, just to show off. Fireworm did some fancy acrobatic somersaults that had the crowd screaming and stamping their feet.
"Start your hunting!"
yelled Gobber the Belch. Every dragon except Toothless flew out to sea. Toothless flapped back to Hiccup's shoulder. "Toothless got a tummy ache," he complained. Hiccup tried not to see his father looking surprised on the sidelines. He tried not to notice the crowd whispering to each other. "That's Stoic's son over there. No, not the tall one with the skeleton tattoos who looks like a pig. The small skinny one who can't even control his minuscule dragon." "Don't forget, Toothless," said Hiccup through gritted teeth. "The fish. I'm going to tell you all the jokes I've ever heard, remember?" "Tell me now," said Toothless. Help came from an unexpected quarter. Snot-Lout broke off from yelling, "Kill, Fireworm, kill!" to lean over and sneer at Hiccup. "What are you doing, Hiccup? You're not talking to that newt with wings, are you? Talking to dragons is against the rules and forbidden by order of Stoic the Vast, your wimpy father." "Newt with wings?" repeated Toothless. "Newt with wings?" "You're not a newt with wings, are you, Toothless?" said Hiccup. "You're the best hunter in the world, aren't you?" "Too right I am," said Toothless grumpily. "You show that snot-faced Snot-Lout and his snobby dragon what a real hunting dragon can do." "Okay, then," said Toothless. Hiccup heaved a huge sigh of relief as Toothless took off in shambolic fashion in the general direction of the sea. "This is too good to be true," Hiccup said to himself 10 minutes later, as Toothless returned from a second trip clearly too bored for words, but dropping a couple of herring at Hiccup's feet. In about half an hour, I, Hiccup, will become a fully paid-up member of the Hairy Hooligan tribe. It was too good to be true. Fireworm was just flying back to Snotlout with her 20th fish, her green cat's eyes snapping with triumph, when Toothless called out, "Sloppy snob!" Fireworm stopped in mid-air. Her head whipped round, her eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" hissed Fireworm. "Oh, no," said Hiccup. "No, Toothless, no, don't do it." "Sloppy snob!" jeered Toothless. "Is that the best you can do? It's pathetic, hopeless, useless. You nightmares think you're so cruel, but you're sloppy as scallops." "You," hissed Fireworm, her eyes dangerously back as she crept forward through the air like a leopard about to spring, "are a little liar." "And you," said Toothless calmly, "are a rabbit-hearted, seaweed-brained, winkle-eating snob." Fireworm went for him. Toothless streaked off as quick as lightning, and Fireworm's massive jaws snapped together with a sickening crunch on nothing but thin air. Chaos ensued. Fireworm completely lost control. She plunged wildly through the air, claws out, biting anything that moved, and letting out great bursts of flame. Unfortunately, in the process, she accidentally scratched Killer, a dragon with a very short temper. Killer then attacked any hooligan dragon within biting distance. Soon the dragons were involved in a full-scale, rip-roaring dragon fight, with the boys running around shouting at them to stop and trying to pull them apart without getting themselves killed. The dragons took absolutely no notice whatsoever, however hard the boys yelled, and Thuggery and Snotlout were very red in the face after some pretty impressive yelling. Gobber the Belch went ballistic on the sidelines.
"Can somebody tell me what in horror and wooden's name is happening?"
Toothless was in his element in this kind of chaos, dodging Fireworm's angry lunges with ease, nipping in with a lively bite at Alligator here and a scratch at Bright Claw there, obviously enjoying the fight enormously. Even Horror Cow showed a great deal of spirit for a dragon who was supposedly vegetarian. She managed to give Fireworm a truly impressive bite on the bottom, as Fireworm and Killer rolled through the air, biting chunks out of one another. Gobber the Belch entered the fray, grabbing hold of Fireworm's tail. Fireworm gave a howl of outrage, squirmed round, and set Gobber's beard on fire. With one massive hand, Gobber swatted out the fire, and with the other he clamped Fireworm's jaws together so she could neither bite nor burn. He tucked the furiously enraged animal under one arm, still holding her mouth closed.
"Stop!"
screamed Gobber the Belch with a hair-raising, skin-crawling, fang-dropping yell that reverberated off the cliffs, bounced off the sea, and whose faint echoes could be heard on the mainland. The boys stopped their useless screaming. The dragon stopped in mid-air. There was an awful silence. Even the watching crowd went quiet. This had never happened before. All 20 boys had shown themselves to be completely out of control of their dragons during the initiation test. Technically, this meant that all of them should be thrown out of their tribes into exile. And exile in this horrid climate could mean death. Food was scarce, the sea was dangerous, and there were certain wild tribes in the islands who were rumored to be cannibals. Gobber the Belch stood, lost for words, his beard still smoking. When he eventually spoke, his voice was deep with the horror of the situation.
"I will have to speak with the elders of the tribes,"
was all he said. He dropped Fireworm on the ground. She had come to her senses, and now slunk toward Snotlout, her tail between her legs. The elders of the tribes were Mogadon and Stoic, Gobber himself, and a few more of the more fearsome warriors, such as Terrible Toughnut, the Vicious Twins, and the hairy, scary librarian from the Meathead Public Library. The crowd and the boys stood absolutely still as the elders consulted in the traditional elder huddle, which looked a bit like a rugby scrum. Meanwhile, the storm was getting worse. Huge claps of thunder burst over their heads. The rain poured down, and they couldn't have been much wetter if they had all jumped into the sea. The elders consulted for a long time. Mogadon got angry at one point and swung a fist at Toughnut. A twin held on to each of his arms until he calmed down again. Eventually, Stoic came out of the huddle and stood before the boys, who were hanging their heads in shame, their dragons at their feet. If Hiccup had been able to look at his father, he would have seen that Stoic was not his normal, merry, violent self. He looked very solemn indeed.
"Novices of the tribes," he bellowed grimly, "this is a very bad day for all of you. You have failed the final test of the initiation program. By the fierce law of the Inner Isles, this means that you should be cast out from the tribes into exile forever. I do not want to do this. Not only because my own son is among you, but also because it will mean that a whole generation of warriors is lost from the tribes. But we cannot ignore our law. Only the strong can belong. In case the blood of the tribes should be weakened, only heroes can be hooligans and meatheads." Stoic jabbed a fat finger at the heavens. "Furthermore," he carried on, "the god Thor is really very angry. This is not the moment to weaken our laws." Thor let out a great crash of thunder, as if to underline this point. "Under normal circumstances," said Stoic, "the ceremony of exile would start now. But going to sea in weather like this would mean certain death for all concerned. As an act of mercy, I will allow you one more night of shelter under my roof, and first thing tomorrow morning you will be set ashore on the mainland to fend for yourselves. From this moment forth, you are all banished, and may not talk to any other member of your tribe." The thunder crashed all around the boys as they stood, heads bowed in the rain. "Pity me, for this is the saddest thing I have ever had to do. To banish my own son," said Stoic sadly. The crowd murmured sympathetically, applauding the nobility of their leader. "A chief cannot live like other people," said Stoic, looking almost pleadingly at Hiccup. "He has to decide what is for the good of the tribe." Suddenly, Hiccup was very angry. "Well, don't expect me to pity you," said Hiccup. "What kind of father thinks his stupid laws are more important than his own son? And what kind of stupid tribe is this anyway, that it can't just have ordinary people in it?" Stoic stood looking down at his son in surprise and shock for a moment. Then he turned round and trudged off.
The tribes were already running off the beach and scrambling up the hillsides toward the shelter of the village, lightning coming down all around them. "I'm going to kill you," hissed Snotlout at Hiccup, Fireworm snarling menacingly from his shoulder. "First thing after we're banished, I'm going to kill you." And he ran off after the others.
I've lost my tooth,"
Toothless complained whinily.
"Came out when I bit that fireworm dragon."
Hiccup took no notice. He looked up at the heavens, beside himself with fury, as the wind scooped up seawater in handfuls and flung it straight into his face.
"Just once!" yelled Hiccup. "Why couldn't you let me be a hero just once? I didn't want anything amazing, just to pass this stupid test so I could become a proper Viking like everybody else."
Thor's thunder boomed and crackled above him blackly.
"Okay, then," screamed Hiccup. "Hit me with your stupid lightning. Just do something to show you're thinking about me at all."
But there were to be no bolts of lightning for Hiccup. Thor clearly didn't think he was important enough for an answer. The storm moved on out to sea. We'll stop there tonight. Sleep tight. Don't let the bedbugs bite. I love you guys with all my heart. See you next time.